ZD3 is Fosi's attempt to make a really good yet really affordable DAC, just like they did with their small amplifiers like V3, ZA3, V3 monos, but this time they are trying to do that with a DAC, ZD3. And you can immediately see some family resemblance, especially with ZA3 amplifier. And this DAC comes at $169 US. Nowadays, with inflation and everything, that is quite an affordable price, really. And for that price, it incorporates quite high-end DAC chip from Sabre, 9039, and that's not the Pro version, but it's still like flagship grade chip. And as we already know, it's not all about the chip itself. So what else can you expect from this device? Looking at the back, you can see that there are your typical digital inputs, USB, optical, coaxial, but there is also not so common HDMI ARC input. I know it's important for some of you. 12 volts trigger in and out are also present, and Bluetooth wireless connectivity too. On the output side of things, analog outputs, we have both single-ended RCAs and balanced XLRs. Now in the front you have a very normal volume knob that doubles as a button and one small circular LCD screen that shows you the volume and selected input and some basic information. A small but functional remote control is included too. And one interesting thing is that you can use this volume knob to control the volume to attenuate the signal on the analog output of this DAC, but you have the switch below, down below the device that says bypass. And if you enable that, you basically bypass the volume attenuation altogether and you get 2.5 and 5 volts on single-ended and balanced outputs respectively. Then power supply is external and with it you get a small switching 12 volts power supply, meaning that if you wish to do so, you can later on try and upgrade that power supply with some aftermarket option. That can be linear power supply or just low noise switching power supply. And at this point, I choose to believe that most of my viewers following this channel are already aware that a better, lower noise power supply does bring sonic benefits, even when the manufacturer tries to haze you by saying that it doesn't matter, like Chord does, for example, with Chord Q-Test. So here you have some freedom of tinkering and upgrading later on. But that's not where upgradability ends, because ZD3 has an option to roll op-amps, meaning that in the output stage, both on the balanced end and single-ended end, we have 3 operational amplifiers in total that are exchangeable, meaning that there is a socket so you can easily pull out factory supplied op-amps, which are LME49720 something something, and you can exchange them for any compatible dual op-amp on the market. And this really gives you opportunity to upgrade or simply fine-tune the sound to your own taste. So having that covered, let's talk about the sound. Out of the box, with its own factory-supplied operational amplifiers and power supply, Fosi ZD3 sounds simply very good. It's tonally very neutral, it resolves a lot of details, but most importantly, it doesn't sound overly analytical or thin. It has healthy tonality, healthy tonal balance, with good amount of bassline and then the mid-range that is quite detailed and open, and then highs that are not aggressive but mostly refined. And since most good DACs offer that nowadays, it's difficult to say much more in isolation, listening to them in isolation. I enjoyed the music, it lacked nothing in particular, so I immediately started comparing it. And I started with Fiio K11 R2R DAC that is priced the same, but it has a headphone amplifier output that is decent, but it's mostly a really good DAC that costs the same as Fosi ZD3. out of the box, these two sound very similar, especially if you use their single-ended outputs, and that is the only analog out that this Fiio K11 R2R actually has. But there are small differences. K11 R2R is slightly warmer sounding DAC, slightly milder with how it presents edges and details, but it's also a touch less resolving. That warmth and softness that it has makes it touch less resolving than Fosi ZD3. And the difference is really subtle. If I would try to be objective, I would say that Fosi ZD3 is slightly more transparent DAC. But depending on your system, your taste, and how you like to enjoy the music, you might prefer warmer and softer Fiio sound. However, if you move to balanced outputs of Fosi and you have balanced inputs on your amp, then that overall clarity and separation will become slightly better, and I do think that in most cases people would notice that. I cannot say if that would be noticeable in all systems, but in most good, well-balanced systems, I think that that slight increase in clarity would be noticeable. Which led me to my second comparison to SMSL D6S. That also has balanced outputs, so this time we can compare apples to apples. And D6S manages to be a touch cleaner, a touch more focused with tone edges. It outlines them a bit better, but it might appear to be a touch more analytical too. And you might like that, or you might not. D6S has a bit more focused and energetic highs. And those highs have a bit more ring to them, like a glassy tonality. And I don't say that in either positive or negative way. Like glassy sounding things in reality exist. And if you need to make that kind of sound, it's good the DAC can do it. On the other hand, Fosi ZD3 is having highs that are a touch more laid back, not as focused and as clean on the edges, but they're also not as ringy. Instead, they sound a touch more textured and refined. And for example, if you would to listen to the exact same cymbal crush on the Fosi ZD3, it would sound a bit more textury, but tamer with that ringiness. With D6S, on the other hand, it would sound more glass-like, more ringy, and in my mind, I also describe those kind of highs a bit more liquid-like. But some of that inner tone texture of a cymbal, some of that harmonic richness and inner cymbal vibrations would be a bit glossed over, not as tonally rich as with Fosi ZD3. So once again, very, very comparable performances, but ZD3 has slightly more laid back and refined presentation, whereas SMSL has that slightly ringier highs and more snappy, but a touch more aggressive highs. And once again, which one would you prefer depends heavily on your system, your room, which frequencies are ringing because you have too many glass surfaces or floor that is not carpeted, or in the other hand, you have too much carpets and furniture and drapes, and in that case, highs are a bit dull. So preferring these kind of subtle differences, it's so difficult to be objective about that. But the thing is that Fosi ZD3, as I said, can be altered. Its sound can be altered. And I will make a whole other video about changing several different pricier discrete op amps like Burson, Sparkos, etc. with Fosi ZD3, because doing all of that in one video would make it too long and unwatchable in my opinion. For today, I just wanted to touch on that topic. And I did that by trying two different op amps. Actually, Fosi themselves send me JRC4580D operational amplifier, and this one is very affordable at like $1.5. But when I put these JRCs inside of the Fosi, its tonality changed quite a bit. Now that slightly relaxed and refined character that reminded me more on Fiio K11 R2R changed to something that is more open, more extended in highs, and has more of a DAC and ringiness in higher frequencies. And in that case, it actually resembled more to SMSL D6S. Actually, it sounded even more open, airier, and more alive in highs to my ears and in my system. And with these cheap JRC op-amps, Fosi ZD3 turned into something that to my ears, and as I said, with my system and in my own room, that is quite well acoustically treated without any high frequency ringing or anything. JRC op-amp made Fosi ZD3 the best sounding budget DAC around $200 that I have at hand. And that is really a strong argument for Fosi ZD3. It can be tinkered with, and you can change its tonality to your liking. And also, as I said, power supply is external too. So you can improve on that by using low noise power supply or a linear power supply, and that lifts up the sound fidelity. I only tried hifi iPower X 12 volts, that is 110. It's a switching power supply, but it's a low noise one, and it almost always improves overall clarity, soundstage width, depth, and background darkness with any budget DAC that I've tried it with. And that holds true for Fosi also. And when I combine the op-amp that I like more and that slightly better power supply, this one could go head-to-head to slightly pricier DACs like SMSL SU9 Pro, for example. And once again, I think that is its greatest strength. Out of the box, it sounds as good as the best around $200 DACs. But down the road, if you decide to invest a bit more into the power supply and op-amp rolling, you can lift that performance and get it on pair with a solid $450-500 DACs. Maybe you spent slightly less money in the process. If you bought several different pricey op-amps, maybe you spend even more, but maybe in the process you had some fun. And you also got to choose and to fine-tune your own tonality and what works for you and your system and your room, instead of just buying a pricier piece of gear and hoping it will work well and you will like it. And that, once again, in my opinion, is the biggest argument for Fosi ZD3 over some of its competitors, that adjustability and that tunability. As already mentioned, sometimes down the road I hope to do a video that will be dedicated to op-amp rolling on this DAC, but that's a topic for another day. For now, I can say that Fosi ZD3 is a really good performer out of the box, but it also holds that hidden potential if you are willing to get busy with some op-amp rolling and find what suits you and your system and your listening room the best. That would be all for today, guys. See you next time.